You know, I've spent over 40 years traveling down the most remarkable rabbit hole you could ever imagine, and I want to share something with you today that changed everything I thought I knew about reality, about who we are, and about why we're really here on this beautiful blue planet. Sit with me for a while, won't you? Get comfortable, maybe make yourself a cup of tea, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just information, it's a doorway, and once you step through it, you can never quite see the world the same way again. And that's a good thing. That's a beautiful thing, because the world you're going to discover is so much more magnificent, so much more filled with possibility and hope and purpose than anything you've been taught to believe. I never set out to become what people call a past life regressionist or a researcher into the unknown. That wasn't my plan at all. I was just an ordinary Navy wife, raising a family, moving from place to place, living what most people would call a perfectly normal life. But sometimes life has other plans for you, doesn't it? Sometimes the universe taps you on the shoulder and says, "This way, come this way." And if you're brave enough or curious enough or maybe just stubborn enough to follow, you end up exactly where you're meant to be. That's what happened to me back in 1968 when a friend asked if I'd help her with a hypnosis project. I didn't know anything about hypnosis. I'd never been hypnotized, never studied it, never even thought much about it. But something inside me said yes, and that yes changed everything. What I discovered through that simple yes, through thousands and thousands of hypnosis sessions over the decades that followed, is that we're living in the middle of the most extraordinary story, and most of us don't even know it. We walk around thinking we're just these bodies, just these personalities, just these little separate beings trying to survive and maybe find a little happiness before it's all over. But that's not even close to the truth, not even in the same universe as the truth. The truth is so much bigger, so much more incredible, and I've seen it. Session after session, person after person, life after life. I've watched as ordinary people, people just like you, closed their eyes and opened up doorways to memories and knowledge and wisdom that had been locked inside them, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. And what I found, what they told me, changed everything I thought I knew about reality itself. You see, when someone goes into deep trance, when they bypass that conscious mind that's always trying to control, always trying to make sense of things based on what it's been taught, something extraordinary happens. They start speaking about things they couldn't possibly know. A farmer from Arkansas describing intricate details of ancient Egyptian temple ceremonies. A school teacher from Kansas recounting a lifetime as a Tibetan monk, using terms and concepts she'd never studied. A mechanic from Texas suddenly speaking about the structure of other dimensions with the precision of a quantum physicist, except using completely different language that came from somewhere else entirely. Now, at first, I thought maybe it was past lives, just past lives, reincarnation. And yes, that's part of it, but it goes so much deeper than that. Because what I discovered is that we're not just reincarnating on Earth, we're not even just reincarnating as humans. The souls I've talked to, the beings that speak through these people in trance, they've told me about lives on other planets, in other forms, in other dimensions, where the rules of physics as we understand them simply don't apply. I've had sessions where people describe living as beings of pure light, no body, just consciousness, just energy, existing in a place where thought creates reality instantly. I've talked to people who remembered being part of something they called the collective, not individuals at all, but part of a group consciousness where thousands of minds functioned as one. I've heard about civilizations so advanced that they'd moved beyond physical form entirely, existing in states of being we don't even have words for. And here's what really shook me They all said they came here to Earth voluntarily. They chose this. They chose to compress themselves down into these limited physical bodies, to forget who they really were, to struggle and suffer and learn in this dense, difficult reality we call life. And when I'd ask them why would you do that? The answer was always the same: because Earth is a school. Earth is where souls come to grow in ways they can't grow anywhere else. And that's when I started to understand something profound. These souls weren't being punished. They weren't sent here against their will. They volunteered. They actually stood in line, so to speak, waiting for their chance to incarnate on Earth during this particular time period. Because what's happening here right now, on this planet, in this moment of history, it's unprecedented. It's never happened before in the entire universe. You see, through these sessions, I learned that Earth is going through a shift, a transformation so massive, so complete, that souls from all over creation wanted to be here to witness it, to participate in it, to be part of it. They called it many things: the shift, the awakening, the new Earth. But what it really is a graduation. Earth and humanity are moving from one level of consciousness to another, from third dimension to fifth dimension, from fear-based reality to love-based reality. And you, me, everyone alive right now, we're here for it. We chose to be here for it. I remember one client who came to me because she felt lost. She said she didn't understand her purpose. Under hypnosis, her higher self explained that she was what they called a way shower. She had lived hundreds of lifetimes, accumulated tremendous wisdom and experience, and she chose to come back one more time, specifically to help others during this transition. She was like a lighthouse, her higher self said. Just by being here, by holding her vibration steady, she was helping to guide others through the storm. And she started crying, not sad tears, but tears of relief. Because finally, after feeling like she didn't belong here, like she was different, like she was struggling for no reason, finally it all made sense. She wasn't broken. She wasn't lost. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she came here to do. That's when I realized that every single person who feels lost, who feels like they don't fit, who looks around at this world and thinks this isn't right, there has to be more. They're not crazy. They're remembering. They're starting to wake up to who they really are and why they really came. And here's what's fascinating. When these souls start to remember, everything changes for them. The corporate job that once defined their identity suddenly feels suffocating. The gossipy conversations that used to fill their time now seem unbearably shallow. The endless pursuit of more money, more status, more stuff that society told them would bring happiness, it all starts to ring hollow. I've watched this transformation happen hundreds of times. A person comes to see me thinking they need help because something's wrong with them. They're depressed, anxious, can't sleep, feel disconnected from everyone around them. They've been to therapists, tried medications, read all the self-help books. Nothing works because nobody's addressing the real issue. The real issue is that their soul is screaming, "This isn't what we came for." You see, before you incarnate, you choose your mission. You volunteer, actually. You sit in this expanded state of consciousness where you can see the entire timeline, where you understand the magnitude of what's happening on Earth right now, and you raise your hand. You say, "I'll go, I'll forget everything I know, I'll be born into the heaviest, densest dimension, and I'll find my way back to remembering. I'll help wake others up." It sounds insane when you're here in the thick of it, doesn't it? Why would anyone volunteer for this? Why would you choose to forget who you really are, to struggle, to feel lost and alone? Because you knew something that you've temporarily forgotten. You knew that the forgetting makes the remembering even more powerful. You knew that by descending into the darkness, you'd learn how to be a light in the darkness. You knew that Earth during this particular time period is like the most advanced spiritual boot camp in the universe. And here's what makes it even more interesting. Most of the souls who volunteered for this mission, they're not first-timers. Through my work, I've discovered that many of you watching this have lived hundreds, sometimes thousands of lives. You've been the peasant and the king, the victim and the perpetrator, the student and the master. You've died young and you've lived to old age. You've experienced wealth and poverty, health and illness, love and heartbreak. But this lifetime, this one is different. This is the lifetime where everything you've ever learned, every skill you've ever developed, every lesson you've ever absorbed across all those incarnations, it's all coming together. This is your masterpiece lifetime. This is the one you've been preparing for. Think about it like this. If you were training to climb Mount Everest, you wouldn't start with Everest, would you? You'd start with smaller mountains. You'd build your skills, your strength, your endurance. You'd learn what works and what doesn't. You'd fall down, get back up, learn from your mistakes. And then when you were finally ready, you'd take on the ultimate challenge. That's what you're doing right now. Earth, during this time of massive transition and awakening, is your Everest, and you chose to be here for it. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, I don't feel like a master soul on an important mission. Most days, I can barely get through my to-do list. I struggle with anxiety, with depression, with feeling lost and purposeless. I don't feel special at all. And that's exactly the point. That's the veil working. That's the forgetting that makes the experience so valuable. If you came here with full memory of who you really are, an eternal, powerful, multi-dimensional being, there'd be no challenge. There'd be no growth. It would be like playing a video game with all the cheat codes activated. Sure, you might win, but you wouldn't learn anything. You wouldn't develop any real skills. And more importantly, you wouldn't experience the satisfaction of genuine growth, the pride of overcoming real obstacles through your own effort. You see, the souls who come here, they're not beginners, they're not naive. During my sessions, I've witnessed something fascinating when people access their life between lives. When they're in that superconscious state between incarnations, they understand exactly what they're signing up for. They review their past lives with complete clarity. They see where they succeeded, where they fell short, and what lessons still need to be learned. And here's what absolutely amazed me. They choose their next life with full knowledge of what's coming. They select their parents, their culture, their body, their challenges, sometimes the very difficulties that would make most of us say, why would anyone choose that? I remember one client who accessed a life between lives memory where she was planning her current incarnation. In that space, she could see the entire blueprint. She knew she would face childhood trauma. She knew she would struggle with self-worth. She knew there would be relationships that would break her heart. And yet, she chose it anyway. When I asked her why, the answer that came through was so simple, so profound. Because this is what I need to learn, compassion. This is what I need to understand the human heart. That's when it really hit me. We're not victims of our circumstances. We're architects of our own experience. The veil of forgetting, the amnesia that comes with birth, isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's absolutely essential. Because if you remember choosing your difficult parent, choosing your health challenge, choosing your financial struggles. You might not engage with them authentically. You might hold back. You might think, well, I chose this as a lesson, so I don't need to fully feel it. But the whole point is to fully feel it. That's why the veil exists. Not as punishment, but as sacred protection for your own growth. It's the kindness of the universe ensuring you don't intellectualize what you came here to experience in your bones. Think about it this way. If you're watching a movie and someone constantly reminds you it's just actors on a set, just special effects, just a script, you can't lose yourself in the story. You can't feel the emotional journey. The same principle applies here. The souls who've shared their between-life experiences with me describe this moment, the moment before incarnation, with such tenderness. They know they're about to forget. They know they're stepping into darkness. And they do it anyway, with courage that takes my breath away. One woman I worked with saw herself, her higher self, literally kissing her human baby self goodbye before fully entering the body. She wept as she described it. I was telling myself, I'll see you again. When this is over, we'll remember together. But for now, you need to go have this adventure without me looking over your shoulder. And that's exactly what happens. You go have the adventure, you fall down, you get hurt, you experience betrayal, you feel joy so piercing it almost hurts. You love people so deeply you can't imagine existing without them. You discover talents you didn't know you had. You overcome things you thought would destroy you. All of it, every single moment, is data, it's experience. It's the universe knowing itself through your unique perspective. And here's what makes this whole design so brilliant. Even though you forget the big picture, you're never truly alone. You have what I call the whisper system. Your intuition, your gut feelings, those moments when you think of someone and they call, that inexplicable pull toward a certain city, a certain career, a certain person. Dreams that feel more real than waking life. Synchronicities that are too perfect to be coincidence. These aren't accidents. They're your higher self, your guides, your soul family, sending you little signals through the veil. Not enough to spoil the experience, but enough to gently course correct when you're drifting too far off your intended path. And here's what most people don't realize. Sometimes the sign isn't gentle at all. Sometimes your soul has to escalate. You know what I'm talking about. You felt it. That job that became so unbearable, you had times to quit. That relationship that imploded so dramatically there was no going back. That health issue that forced you to completely change your lifestyle. We call these course corrections. But really, they're more like emergency brakes. Your soul signed up for certain experiences, certain lessons, certain growths. And when your human self gets stubborn, when you cling to what's comfortable, what's familiar, what's slowly killing your spirit, your higher self steps in with a firmer hand. I've seen this pattern thousands of times in my sessions. Someone comes to me devastated about a loss, a job, a relationship, a home. And when we go into the session, when we access that higher perspective, you know what they discover? That the tragedy was actually a rescue mission. Their soul orchestrated the entire thing to get them back on track. One woman came to me after losing everything in a divorce, her marriage, her financial security, even her home. She was broken, couldn't understand why this happened to someone who tried so hard to be good, to do everything right. But in the session, we discovered she'd been suffocating. Her soul was screaming for creative expression, for freedom, for authentic connection. The marriage was a gilded cage, and she would have stayed in it forever out of obligation. So her higher self, in collaboration with her husband's higher self, arranged the dissolution. It looked times like devastation from the human level, from the soul level. It was liberation. This is the part that challenges people the most, understanding that your soul doesn't prioritize your comfort. It prioritizes your growth, your expansion, your evolution. And this is where most people get stuck. They're waiting for permission, waiting for a sign from the universe, waiting to feel ready. But here's what I learned from thousands of sessions. The universe doesn't send you permission slips. It sends you opportunities disguised as obstacles. Think about it. When you decided to come here, to this physical reality, you didn't wait until conditions were perfect. You jumped in knowing it would be messy, knowing you'd forget who you were, knowing you'd have to remember yourself all over again. That forgetting, it wasn't a mistake, it was necessary. Because if you came here fully remembering your power, your divinity, your connection to source, there would be no growth, no contrast, no evolution. You chose to forget so you could experience the profound journey of remembering, and every single challenge you faced has been part of that remembering process. That job you lost that devastated you, it was redirecting you towards something more aligned. That relationship that fell apart, it was clearing space for deeper connections, starting with the one with yourself. That health crisis that scared you, it was your body's way of getting your attention, asking you to finally listen. The universe speaks through disruption, through the things that shake you awake. And when you start to understand this language, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start recognizing yourself as the creator of your experience. Not in some superficial, think positive thoughts kind of way, but in a deep cellular understanding that you are literally made of the same energy that creates galaxies. The same intelligence that orchestrates every heartbeat, every breath, every sunset that's working through you. Right now, in this moment, you are not separate from creation. You are creation, expressing itself in human form. And when you truly grasp this, when you feel it in your bones, you can no longer pretend to be small. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And that's when the real work begins, because now you have a choice. You can continue playing the old game, pretending you don't know better, wearing the mask that society handed you, or you can step fully into your truth even when it makes others uncomfortable. Even when they don't understand, I watch people make both choices. I've sat across from individuals who had profound awakenings in their sessions, people who met their higher selves, who remembered their purpose, who felt the infinite love of the universe flowing through them. And then they went back to their regular lives and nothing changed. They went right back to the same patterns, the same complaints, the same limitations. Why? Because knowing isn't enough. Feeling isn't enough. You have to integrate. You have to embody. You have to let that knowledge reshape every corner of your existence. This is what I call spiritual maturity. It's not about having the most impressive experiences or collecting mystical moments like souvenirs. It's about taking what you've learned and actually living it. It's about making the 1,000 small decisions every day that align with your highest truth instead of your smallest fear. And here's what nobody tells you about that journey. It gets lonely sometimes. When you start vibrating at a different frequency, not everyone can meet you there. Some relationships naturally fall away. Some people who were once close start to feel distant, not because you're better than them, never think that, but because you're simply on different paths now. I remember a woman who came to me in tears because her family thought she'd lost her mind. She'd had a regression where she remembered being a healer in ancient Egypt, and it awakened something in her. She started studying energy work, changing her diet, questioning everything she'd been taught. Her husband wanted the old her back. Her friends stopped calling. "Am I crazy?" she asked me. "Should I just go back to how things were?" I looked into her eyes and said, "You're not crazy. You're remembering who you are." And here's what I've learned through all these years of working with souls. Asterisk, asterisk, the universe will never punish you for choosing your truth. Asterisk, asterisk, what feels like loss is actually recalibration. Those relationships that fall away, they were frequency matches for who you used to be, not who you're becoming. The universe isn't taking anything from you, it's making space. Think of it like this. You're a radio station, and for years you've been broadcasting on 98.5 FM. Listeners, all your audience, they're tuned to 98.5. But you're evolving now. Your frequency is shifting. Maybe you're moving up to 103.7. The people still tuned to 98.5, they can't hear you anymore. Not because there's something wrong with them or you're just on different frequencies now. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because part of you wants to keep broadcasting on both stations simultaneously. You want to stay connected to everyone, keep everyone happy, maintain all those old relationships while also honoring this new version of yourself. But you can't broadcast on two frequencies at once. You'll just create static, interference. Neither station comes through clearly. Asterisk, asterisk. So you have to make a choice. Asterisk, asterisk. Do you dim your light to match the room you're in, or do you shine fully and trust that the right people will be drawn to your true frequency? I've watched thousands of people navigate this crossroads. The ones who try to straddle both worlds, they end up exhausted, resentful, fragmented. The ones who honor their evolution, even when it's scary, they experience something magical. Asterisk, asterisk, new people show up. Asterisk, asterisk, new opportunities, new synchronicities. It's like the universe was just waiting for them to commit to their frequency before sending in the matches. But here's the part nobody tells you. Asterisk, asterisk, there's a gap. Asterisk, asterisk, a space between who you were and who you're becoming, between the old relationships ending and the new ones beginning. This is the void, the alone time, the quiet. And you know what happens in the void? In this emptiness that society teaches you to fear? You meet yourself, not the version you've been performing, not the role you've been playing to keep others comfortable, not the mask you wear to fit in, to be accepted, to be loved. The real you, the one who's been waiting beneath all those layers of conditioning and expectation, the one who knows things you've forgotten, the one who remembers why you came here. I've watched people resist this moment with everything they have. They fill every second with noise, music, television, scrolling, anything to avoid that quiet confrontation. Because meeting yourself, truly meeting yourself, requires courage most people don't know they possess. But here's what the hermit teaches us. That meeting is the treasure. That encounter with your authentic self is the gold you've been seeking in all the wrong places. You see, we're taught to find ourselves through others, through relationships, through validation, through reflection in someone else's eyes. And yes, relationships matter, love matters, connection matters deeply. But you cannot give what you haven't found in yourself first. You cannot love another fully when you're still a stranger to your own heart. You cannot show up authentically in connection when you don't know who you are in solitude. The hermit withdraws not because they hate people, but because they love truth more than comfort. They choose the difficult path of self-knowledge over the easy path of self-deception. And in that withdrawal, something miraculous happens. The noise fades, the opinions of others grow quieter, the shoulds and supposed tos lose their power. And in that space, that sacred, empty, quiet space, you begin to hear something you may have never heard before. Your own voice. Not the voice that repeats what you've been taught, not the voice that echoes others' expectations, but the voice that's been yours since before you learned to speak their language. The voice of your soul, and that voice, my friend, that voice knows everything. It knows why you're afraid, it knows what you're avoiding, it knows the dreams you've buried and the gifts you've denied. It knows the truth you came here to live, and it's becoming harder and harder to ignore that whisper, isn't it? Because the universe has a funny way of getting your attention when you refuse to listen. It starts with gentle nudges, a book that falls off the shelf, a conversation you overhear at just the right moment, a number sequence that keeps appearing, a person who walks into your life speaking truths you needed to hear. But if you keep ignoring those nudges, they become louder. That job that was draining you suddenly disappears. That relationship that was keeping you small finally ends. That health issue that's been brewing finally forces you to stop and pay attention. The universe isn't punishing you when these things happen. It's redirecting you. It's saying, asterisk, you weren't listening to the whispers, so here's something you can't ignore, asterisk. I've seen this pattern countless times in my work. Someone loses everything they thought defined them, and initially they're devastated. But years later they look back and say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I never would have found my true path if I hadn't been forced off the wrong one. The dismantling isn't destruction, it's liberation. It's the universe clearing away everything that isn't authentically you, so that what times is times authentically you can finally emerge. It's removing the costume so you can remember your real face. It's burning down the set so you can step off the stage and into your actual life. And here's what I need you to understand. You don't have to wait for the universe to dismantle things for you. You can choose to listen to the whisper now. You can choose to acknowledge what your soul has been trying to tell you. You can choose to stop pretending and start living. Because every moment you spend living someone else's version of your life is a moment you're not living your own. And your own life, it's waiting for you. It's been waiting this whole time. You know, I've heard people say, but I've tried. I've read the books, I've done the meditations, I've gone to the workshops, and I still feel stuck. I still feel like I'm not good enough. And I understand that frustration. I really do. Because what's happened is this. You've been trying to fix yourself. You've been treating your spiritual journey like there's something broken that needs repair, like you're a project that needs completion. But what if there's nothing to fix? What if you're already complete and you're just remembering that completion? See, the subconscious doesn't respond well to force. It doesn't respond to demands. It's like trying to grip water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. But when you open your hand, when you relax, the water rests there naturally. That's the real secret to accessing your gifts. It's not about trying harder. It's about trying less. It's about getting out of your own way and allowing what's already there to flow through. I've seen this time and time again in sessions. The people who struggle the most are the ones who are fighting themselves. They're so afraid of doing it wrong, so worried they won't be good enough, that they create the very blockage they're trying to clear. And then, in a moment of surrender, when they finally stop trying to control it, When they finally let go of needing to prove something, that's when everything opens up. That's when the information floods through. That's when they realize they were standing in front of an open door the entire time, just afraid to walk through it. Your gifts aren't hidden from you. They're not locked away in some distant realm that you need special keys to access. They're here, right now, waiting for your permission to express themselves. They're in every intuitive hit you've dismissed, every synchronicity you've rationalized away, every dream you've forgotten by morning. The question isn't whether you have these abilities. You do, every single one of you. The question is, are you willing to trust them? Are you willing to trust yourself? Because that's really what this is about. Trust. Not blind faith, but deep cellular trust in the intelligence that animates everything. You know, I worked with thousands of people over the years, and I noticed something fascinating. The ones who had the hardest time accessing their past lives or connecting with their higher consciousness weren't the skeptics, it was the people who didn't trust themselves. They'd come to me and say, I don't think I can do this. What if I'm just making it all up? And I'd tell them what I'm telling you now. Your rational mind can't make up the kind of information that comes through in these sessions. The details, the emotions, the historical accuracy that people have no way of knowing, that doesn't come from imagination, that comes from memory, that comes from accessing something real. But here's the thing, you have to get out of your own way. You have to stop second guessing every intuitive hit, every gut feeling, every synchronicity that shows up in your life. Because when you dismiss these things as coincidence or wishful thinking, you're essentially telling the universe, I don't trust the guidance you're sending me. And the universe? Well, it respects your free will. It won't force anything on you. If you keep insisting you're alone, if you keep refusing to see the signs, eventually they become quieter. Not because you're abandoned, but because you've asked not to hear them. I've seen this happen. People who shut down their intuition for years, sometimes decades, because someone once told them they were being silly or irrational. And then they wonder why life feels so hard, why everything's a struggle. It's like trying to navigate in the dark when you've got a perfectly good flashlight in your hand. You've just convinced yourself the batteries don't work. The truth? The batteries always work. You just have to flip the switch. So how do you start trusting again? How do you rebuild that connection if you've spent years ignoring it? You start small. You start paying attention. You begin by noticing when your body speaks to you, not with words, but with sensations. That tightness in your chest when you're about to say yes to something you know you should decline. That flutter of excitement that rises up when you think about a particular path, even if it doesn't make logical sense. These aren't random signals. They're your inner guidance system trying to get your attention. I worked with a woman once who told me she'd developed terrible migraines. They'd come on suddenly, always on Sunday evenings. She went to doctors, tried medications, changed her diet. Nothing worked. When we explored it under hypnosis, what came through was fascinating. Her soul showed her that those migraines were her body's way of screaming what she wouldn't let herself admit consciously. She dreaded going back to her job. She'd convinced herself the position was perfect, that she should be grateful, that leaving would be irresponsible. But her higher self knew differently. The migraines weren't the problem. They were the message. Within 3 months of leaving that job, the migraines disappeared completely. Her body stopped shouting because she finally listened. This is what I mean by rebuilding the connection. Your body is always communicating with your soul, always. You just have to relearn the language. And here's something beautiful. Your soul is incredibly patient, It doesn't matter if you've ignored it for 10 years or 40. The moment you turn your attention back, it responds. So you start noticing. You pause before making decisions, and you feel into them instead of just thinking about them. You ask yourself, does this expand me or contract me? Does this bring me closer to who I really am, or does it pull me further into a role I'm playing? And you listen to your dreams. Oh, your dreams. This is where your soul speaks most freely, without the interference of your conscious mind's judgments and fears. Your soul will use symbols, metaphors, recurring themes. Pay attention to the dreams that repeat, the ones that feel more real than waking life. I've had clients who dreamed of the same door for years before they finally walked through it in their sessions with me, and when they did, they found entire lifetimes waiting on the other side. Write them down immediately when you wake. Keep a journal by your bed. Because the conscious mind is clever, it will convince you that you'll remember, that it was so vivid there's no way you could forget. But within minutes, sometimes seconds, that doorway closes, the symbols fade, and you're left with just a feeling, a sense that something important was trying to reach you. I remember one woman who kept dreaming of a red door in a stone wall. Just that, nothing else. A red door, slightly ajar, light coming through. For months, this dream persisted. And when we finally regressed her, she went immediately to a lifetime in medieval France, and there it was, that exact door. It was the entrance to a monastery where she'd hidden manuscripts, knowledge that the church was trying to destroy. Her soul had been trying to tell her for months, there's something here you need to remember, there's knowledge you're supposed to retrieve. The dream world is the bridge, you see. It's where the veil is thinnest, where your higher self can slip messages through to your waking consciousness. And some of you, many of you watching this, are already receiving guidance through your dreams. You're already being prepared for what's coming. Now, here's what I want you to understand about free will, because this confuses so many people. Yes, you chose to be here. Yes, there are lessons you plan to learn. But you're not locked into anything. This isn't predestination. This is a curriculum you designed with options, with choices, with multiple pathways to the same growth. You see, when I would work with clients, I'd ask them under hypnosis, why did you choose these particular parents? And the answers would astound people. They'd say things like, I chose my alcoholic father because I needed to learn boundaries in this lifetime. In my last life, I was too rigid, too controlling. I needed to experience chaos to find my center, to learn how to maintain peace within myself, regardless of external circumstances. Or they'd say, I chose my critical mother because I needed to stop seeking external validation. I'd spent 3 lifetimes looking for approval from others. This time, I had to learn to approve of myself first. And here's what's beautiful about this. The same challenging parent that teaches one soul about boundaries might teach their sibling about compassion. Different souls, different lessons, same classroom. That's why siblings can have such different experiences of the same childhood. You're not living the same life. You're having completely different educations within the same household. Now, when people first hear this concept, there's often resistance. Are you saying I chose to be abused? Are you saying I asked for this trauma? And I understand that reaction, but let me be very clear here. You didn't choose abuse because you deserved it or because you wanted to suffer. You chose challenging circumstances because your soul knew that within those challenges lay the specific catalyst for your growth. Your soul didn't say, oh good, suffering. Your soul said, "This circumstance will give me the opportunity to remember who I really am, to develop the strength I came here to build, to master the lesson I've been working on across multiple lifetimes." There's a profound difference between those two perspectives. One makes you a victim, the other makes you a warrior on a chosen path. And I watched session after session as people moved from that victim consciousness into empowerment when they understood this truth. Some of the most remarkable sessions I ever conducted involved people remembering what I came to call landmark lives, incarnations where they made pivotal choices that would affect dozens of future lifetimes. These weren't always dramatic moments in history. Sometimes they were quiet choices made in ordinary circumstances that set entire patterns in motion. It was the vow she made to herself in that moment. Never again will I let myself be trapped. Never again will I be unable to move, unable to run, unable to save myself. That vow was so powerful, made in such an extreme emotional state, that it imprinted on her soul. She carried it through death into the between life state, and then brought it with her into this current lifetime. Her soul remembered the vow even though her conscious mind didn't. So every time she was in a confined space, her soul panicked, thinking it was protecting her from being trapped again. The claustrophobia wasn't random. It was actually her soul trying to keep a promise it had made centuries ago. And the beautiful part? Once she understood the origin, once she brought that awareness into the light, the claustrophobia began to dissolve. Not overnight, but gradually, because the soul realized it didn't need to protect her anymore. The danger had passed lifetimes ago. The cell was gone. She was free. This is what I mean when I say karma isn't punishment. It's information. It's your soul leaving breadcrumbs for you to follow back to understanding. And when you pick up those breadcrumbs, when you follow them home, the patterns release, the fears soften, the inexplicable becomes clear. But here's what's fascinating. As we explored that life further, we discovered something remarkable. In that lifetime, she had made a vow with everything in her being. I will never let fear silence me again. I will speak my truth no matter what.